Hey everyone, Jimmy Muller here with Muller Chokes. Today I want to talk about screw-in choke tubes and modifying a fixed choke barrel to accept a screw-in choke tube. This, in my opinion, if you're a hunter, is a definite no-no, and I want to talk to you about why, because there's a lot of confusion, a lot of myth about it, just a lot of problems that this can cause you, and I want to explain why so there's no more confusion, okay? So if we take, these are going to be 20 gauges today, okay? But it's just, it's all relative for the example. This is a Beretta A400 Extreme Plus, which is a modern shotgun made with choke tubes. Okay, this one takes the Optima HP choke system, okay? So these choke tubes are designed for all types of ammo. Whether you're shooting lead target loads, pheasant loads, duck loads, turkey loads, goose loads, big game loads, deer loads, hog loads, whatever. These barrels are hardened, 4130 tool steel. They're approved for steel shot and tungsten and everything else that you could shoot through it, right? And my choke tubes are also approved for any type of material, pellet, or ammo you want to shoot through it. Even buckshot, slugs, whatever. There are no limitations. However, when we get into older or even newer guns that come with a fixed choke barrel, okay, those barrels were never designed or intended to have a screw-in choke tube into them, installed into them, or have them inside that barrel. Now, let me show you why. This Beretta A400 Extreme Plus 20 gauge, the OD of the barrel, the outside diameter, okay, measures 800 thousandths of an inch, 0.800. If we take this older Winchester Model 12 20 gauge, okay, that is unfired, very valuable to collectors, right? And we carefully measure the barrel. It is 695 thousandths of an inch, OD. So this barrel is much smaller on the outside diameter, even though it's a fixed modified choke, okay? It's got a pretty thick barrel there, right? But that thickness has nothing to do with being able to or not being able to put a choke tube into that barrel. The other thing you need to be aware of is if you do take that fixed choke barrel to a gunsmith and you have them thread it for a choke tube, the only choke tube that can be installed into a fixed choke barrel is a thin-walled choke tube system. And what that means is it's a thin-walled choke, unlike a standard thickness factory choke tube that was designed to withstand the outward forces of big steel shot, big lead shot, tungsten shot, heavy shot, everything that you could put through this, buckshot, slugs, whatever. These barrels on the modern choke tube guns are hardened 4130. They're designed to be able to withstand the scouring and the galling and the pressures of steel shot hunting loads, along with TSS, everything else you want to put through it, okay? The other guns are not. They're not developed for steel shot. They're not developed for tungsten. Most of those barrels, regardless of whether they're chrome lined or not, the barrels are not hardened or steel shot approved. Regardless of that, even if you do have a modern shotgun with a fixed choke barrel and it's approved for steel shot, if you machine it and you put a thin wall choke system in it, which by the way is the only system you can put into a fixed choke barrel because of the wall thickness or the OD of the barrel, that thin wall choke system cannot and should not ever have steel shot duck or goose loads put through it I would not put a heavy turkey load through it because of the outward forces of a heavy payload, okay, and larger shot sizes. I would not even use large shot bismuth through a thin wall choke due to outward forces. Not that the pellets are harder than lead or anything else. I know bismuth is made for older fixed choke barrel guns, fixed choke barreled guns, okay? They are not made or intended to be used through a thin wall choke system. And here's why. If you shove these big, heavy payloads through a thin wall choke system that's not intended to be used for that, the thread area of the choke tube can swell. And if it swells and expands into the threads of the barrel, it's going to become one with the barrel. It's going to be swaged into the threads of the barrel, and you're not going to get it out unless you bring it to a competent gunsmith or a machinist, and they indicate the barrel end perfectly square and perfectly concentric, and they machine that choke tube out and then peel the threads out of your barrel precisely without damaging the threads in the barrel, okay? As you can imagine, this is a very tedious, very high precision job that is expensive, and it takes a long time, okay? So if you take, as a recap, if you take a fixed choke barrel that was not intended to have choke tubes in it, and you bring it to a gunsmith and they put a choke tube in it, it is going to be a thin-walled choke system. That thin-walled choke tube cannot be used with steel shot for hunting ducks or geese. It should not be used with lead turkey loads because of the amount of payload squeezing through it. It cannot be used with any type of tungsten or TSS. It might be able to be used with some bismuth, but I wouldn't put a big, heavy bismuth load through with big shot, you know, meaning like bigger than maybe, I don't know, 6 shot. I wouldn't do it personally, okay? So that means I would never do it, period. And I hope that this clarifies some things. Now, for you technical people out there, you may be asking, well, why can't you do it? Okay, so the OD of the threads on this choke tube, I apologize, I have this on cinematic so it doesn't focus very well, but the diameter of the threads on this choke tube is 678 thousandths of an inch. 678. If you remember right, the OD of this 20 gauge Winchester barrel is only 696, okay? So let's use round numbers. Let's say this barrel is 700 on the outside diameter, 0.700. And let's say the threads on this is 680, because it's very close to 680. It's 676, right? So 680 thread going into a 700 barrel. That leaves you with 20 thousandths of an inch diametrically, not per side. Per side, that leaves you 10 thousandths of an inch between the thread and the outside diameter of that barrel. You know what that means? If you grabbed onto the barrel and you smacked it on something, it would break off, okay? One hair on your head is 3 thousandths of an inch. There's only going to be 10 thousandths per side of barrel thickness between the thread of the choke and the outside diameter of the barrel. 3 hairs on your head. I'm just going to snap it off, okay? Not okay. You can't do that. So this reason is exactly why you cannot put a standard choke tube inside a factory choked barrel that was not meant for a screw and choke. The outside diameter of the barrel, as I showed you, is not large enough to have enough material inside the barrel to give you a standard thickness walled choke. Okay? I hope that makes sense, and I hope I didn't repeat myself too much. But the other downside to putting a thin wall aftermarket choke system into a fixed choke barrel, not only the problems I just discussed with you, but you also take the value and the collectability away from that original gun. So, as an example, if I was to take this and I was to send this to a gunsmith and have him thread this for a choke tube system, the value of this gun would plummet, okay? The collectability of it, the desire of it, gone, okay? And not only that, the only thing I could ever use it for moving forward, clay targets with small lead shot target loads, maybe some quail. That's about it, okay? So not only did you destroy the value of the gun, you lost total usability of the gun, the way it was designed. And you paid a lot of money to do that. So go buy yourself a shotgun that comes with a factory screw and choke if that's what you want. Do not modify a pre-existing gun for a thin wall choke system. It's not practical. It's not intelligent. And all the things I discussed, I just wouldn't do it. I'm sorry if some of you don't agree with me, especially those that do it, but these are the facts. These are the truths about doing so. I wouldn't do it. I would never recommend it to anybody that I know. All right? Have a good day. Hope this clarifies a lot of confusion about aftermarket screw and chokes into a fixed choke barrel gun. Thank you.